As winter approaches, Molly becomes increasingly troublesome, often arriving late for work and spending her time admiring her reflection. Clover eventually confronts her about allowing a man from Foxwood to pet her, which Molly denies, but her guilt is apparent. After Clover discovers a hidden stash of sugar and ribbons in Molly's stall, Molly disappears. Later, pigeons report that she's seen in Willington, pulling a dog cart and happily wearing ribbons. We can pause here for a little bit and talk about Molly. Molly. What is Molly up to? Molly is starting to ruffle some feathers now on the farm. She's arriving late for work. She's spending a lot of time just admiring herself. And she's been seen at another farm, right? Dilly-dallying and having a grand time. I think we discussed Molly before in terms of what Molly might represent and what Molly might mean in real life terms. But what do we make of Molly's actions here? Molly's habits that are kind of forming. Do we make of it, if anything?
Well, Molly could symbolize the fact that this is a forgotten part of the whole rebellion per se. She is not with the rebellion. She doesn't want to be with the past or the future, and she's a forgotten part of the bourgeoisie who want things to remain in a specific way. She wants to have benefits that don't crack a sweat, literally, and she's not interested in what is the modus operandi of the regime, the current rebellion. She does not care, which by all indications seem to indicate, I saw quite a few people, she's a little more outward per se than Benjamin. So of him simply saying, hey, you never see a dead donkey yet, but he's sticking around. Her case, she's going to move to the next best thing. That's going to keep her life intact, which would represent, isn't that representative of the Russian Revolution and the bourgeoisie, Tsar and them, that kind of thing?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we see Molly as this character who she's in a position where she can enjoy certain benefits, certain luxuries, and so she doesn't necessarily want an overhaul, an upheaval. She's fine as it is, right? In one sense, we could say yes, she's very self-centered, very selfish. In another sense, well, if you had all those luxuries, would you want a revolution to happen? Right. So I guess we can ask ourselves that question. And even though in the summary here, this is only one paragraph, this is a number of paragraphs in the actual text that I'm sure we've read. So it means Orwell wanted us to pay attention to Molly. He gave her a lot of paragraphs, right, back to back, just about Molly and how she's been, lollygagging and having a grand time over at Foxwood, and she's so addicted to the ribbons and the sugar, which would be, the trivial luxuries of life, as it were, right? And you compared Molly to Benjamin Vashti. I can see both some similarities and some opposites when I look at those two characters, because while both Molly and Benjamin share a kind of indifference to the rebellion in that they don't seem to care either way. Their indifference, they're each coming from a very different place, right? Molly's indifference is coming from half, I would say, ignorance, just not having a big enough brain to even process what a rebellion means, and half the comfort that she enjoys that other animals don't necessarily enjoy. So because of that, she's able to kind of be more relaxed and, dilly-dally, play around, have her fun. But Benjamin is the least ignorant of all the animals. He is the one with the most experience, the most knowledge, the most foresight. And it is this it's this knowledge that makes him so cynical, because he's seen it all. He knows how this is going to end up. He's seen this kind of thing before. This is nothing new or nothing shocking to him. The story kind of indicates that he might have lived through multiple attempts to revolt, of revolution. And so his cynicism is kind of, well, life is going to be what life has always been. It can't be helped. I've seen different things tried. Nothing really ever changes in the end. So he Benjamin is that person who knows too much to care. Some people don't know enough to care, and then some people on the opposite end, they know too much to care in him. And Benjamin is that kind of person. very, that kind of animal, represents that kind of person. So it's very interesting looking at Benjamin versus Mollie and why these two characters seem to not care as much about the rebellion as everybody else. All right. In January, the weather grows bitterly cold, making fieldwork impossible. During this time, the animals attend many meetings, which the pigs organize and lead as they're the most intelligent. Though the animals still ratify the pigs' decisions, Snowball and Napoleon frequently clash, especially about the windmill. This windmill is gonna become very important. Snowball envisions the windmill as a way to provide electricity, making the animals' lives easier. So going back to Snowball's sense of, practicality and his sense of looking out for the greater good of the farm. But Napoleon argues that focusing on food production is more important. The animals are divided over the issue, but only Benjamin remains indifferent. Yeah, we just mentioned Benjamin being indifferent, not really taking a side, claiming that no matter what happens, life will always be difficult. Yeah. So this windmill, it's not super important yet, but as the chapters progress, it's gonna become perhaps the most important symbol in the novella, right? The windmill gives both Snowball and Napoleon a chance to share their vision, to share their leadership style. And then it gives the animals this futuristic, this kind of distant project to keep working on. It's really a physical thing that they can actually build now. So all along, they have been working, the revolution has happened, they're in control of their own destinies now, but they haven't had this momentous artifact in the way that the Battle of the Cowshed was a momentous moment. Now they need a physical thing to kind of concretize their value as a people. It's a little ironic calling them a people, right? As a nation. And the windmill is going to be this thing that they can build, and it's going to make their lives tangibly better. And so, building this windmill, seeing this project through to the end becomes the goal. The goal is no longer this kind of obscure, we want a better life, this vague idea of a future. But the goal is now a physical, tangible thing that they can put on a timeline. And so the windmill is extremely important for rallying the animals to work, important for giving Snowball and Napoleon, kind of an outlet to express their ideas of leadership, their vision for the farm. And then the windmill is also physically symbolic, the physical, the cyclical nature of the windmill going round and round and round, spinning around and around, and kind of infinitely endless motion also symbolizes the perpetual foolishness and the lack of result from effort. You're just working, doing the same thing over and over again, day after day after day, pulling the blocks, stacking the bricks, making the eggs, producing the milk. So it's like running on a treadmill where you're putting in effort, but you're not necessarily moving from where you are. You're not actually progressing. And so the windmill, at least in my opinion, can serve as a symbol in so many different ways, on so many levels. Look at the rebellion. The rebellion seems to be moving the animals' life in a different direction. But do the animals actually experience change? Do the animals actually experience an improved quality of life? Or is it that they simply move from one slave master to the next? So the windmill, being the ultimate project that the animals are trying to complete, is extremely fitting as a symbol on a number of different levels. And I can imagine so many different types of questions asking us to look at the windmill as a key symbol in the novella. What does it mean? How does it relate to characterization? How does it represent or symbolize the meaninglessness of the rebellion and stuff like that? So we're going to see a lot more on this windmill as we go. So at a meeting to vote on the windmill, Snowball passionately argues for its benefits, winning over the animals. Just as the animals are about to vote, Napoleon signals to 9 ferocious dogs. Very interesting. Again, Snowball seems to have legitimately won the clash against Napoleon. But what happens? Napoleon uses underhanded tactics to get on top. He signals the 9 dogs, which would be from the same 9 puppies that he taught. They are the animals that grow to become his army, right? We kind of see them represented in the image here, right? No fully grown from the puppies he secretly raised. They chase Snowball off the farm, and Napoleon quickly declares that there will be no more Sunday meetings. Instead, a pig committee, led by him, of course, will make all the decisions. Though the animals are dismayed, Squealer soon convinces them that Napoleon's leadership is necessary to prevent Mr. Jones from returning. 3 weeks later, Napoleon announces that the windmill will be built after all, claiming it was his idea all along. What do we think of chapter 5 before we get into the characters and stuff like that? What are some major shifts, some major points that we have to take from this chapter? Haley, Sarita, Isaiah, Oscar, come on. What do we think? Especially from the last third of the chapter. A lot of things, a lot of really significant things happen. Yeah? Very exciting chapter.
I think that's the point where Napoleon fully gained control of the farm.
Yeah, chasing Snowball out and setting up himself as king. And what do you think is going to be the impact still at you, Sarita? What do you think is going to be the impact of there being one leader as opposed to, let's call it, two candidates for leadership? Because it was Snowball versus Napoleon all along, kind of pulling and tugging at ideas, trying to, win the hearts of the people. But now there's only Napoleon. What would this mean for leadership and for the animal?
Well, based on Napoleon, since there would only be one leader, it would mean that all decisions for the farm, the entire farm would basically be under whatever he wants it to. So if he wants to make all decisions, he can say that, and he did say that. So
yeah, so power has now been monopolized and centralized, which is very dangerous, politically speaking. That's a dangerous thing, and that's why most countries have multiple parties, usually two prominent parties, always running against each other. And it's usually pretty close, neck and neck. That ability to, vote out somebody you don't like, it gives the people some power. But when there's only one king, one leader, and there's no option, there's no one else who can challenge that leader, then a dictatorship can begin to form. And what do you think of the decisions that Napoleon makes immediately? He makes some quick decisions after establishing himself as the sole leader. You see Squealer doing his thing, fulfilling his role as the mouthpiece, the very persuasive pig. And then, this is pretty important too, Napoleon announces that the windmill will be built after all, claiming it was his idea all along. And this is the beginning of the kind of very, very obvious rewriting of history, right? If you read through, I'm looking at the full text, and I'm seeing where Squealer is basically discrediting Snowball's work in the Battle of the Cowshed. We know what's his name? Snowball. We know what Snowball did in that battle, but Squealer is basically beginning to erase what actually happened. And so I'm left to wonder how much of history has been entirely rewritten. All right, some interesting quotes. Mollie's disappearance. Mollie disappeared. None of the animals ever mentioned Mollie again. Yeah, Mollie's defection, Mollie's abandonment of the farm symbolizes the rejection of the new regime by those who prefer the comfort of the old ways. Right? The character who is unable to sacrifice her own personal luxuries for the greater good of the masses.
So, excuse me. Is it also, could it be also interpreted that although Mollie seems very fickle from the very onset of this, could it also mean that she is just another version of Benjamin, where he absolutely does nothing? She, on the other hand, says, hey, my comforts in life are not worth this rebellion, and I'm going to make an escape for it. I don't care about anybody else, but I'm going to move on. I'm going to find a way out of this quote-unquote rebellion and do something. She actually does something. So is she as fickle and is she as daft as we think she is?
I don't know if I would say daft, because I think it's more selfish than daft, because she's making a tactical decision in in leaving the farm. I guess she would have weighed both decisions. Well, if I stay here, I'm gonna have to work more. My quality of life is gonna go down to average and blah 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 if I leave. So I guess she would have worked out that leaving would have afforded her the kind of luxuries that she enjoys. But that's also a very optimistic way of looking at it. That's Molly being very optimistic, very I don't know. There might be a little bit of naivety in it because we can only guess what happens to Molly after she leaves. Does she really find an easy life? Is she really there living it up and enjoying the sugar and ribbons? It's hard to say that she would have just found this easy life that she's looking for because whichever farm that she would have gone to, I guess it's the Foxwood farm. I'm guessing the situation it would be one of two things. Either there's a rebellion there, animals working to get things started, or the animals are under subjugation, which means there's a human being running the show. I don't think Foxwood or any other farm would have a successful rebellion with, perfect equality and so on. The novella kind of indicates that is not even a realistic outcome. So maybe Benjamin maybe he's too cynical, but I personally believe that he's more realistic than Molly in that he knows that Molly is just going to another dead end. So Benjamin just gives up altogether. Maybe Benjamin, has the wherewithal and the knowledge to leave the farm as well and go somewhere else. But who knows if he has tried that before in the past. It seems as if, he said, have you ever seen a dead donkey or something like that? It sounds as if he has been around. So he might have had his phase when he was, making the efforts, trying to do this, trying to go here and there, just like Molly is doing now. And after all the efforts and all the lifetimes of experience, his conclusion is nothing works. Life is sad. We live, we work, we die. Why do anything? So Molly might be, I would say, a younger version of Benjamin, while Benjamin is is Molly in the future. Perhaps,
All right. When authors write, they write under the authorial content and they tend to, they don't put details. I always told myself that whenever a writer puts a story together, there's a real reason why certain symbolisms are put in. And I've always wondered, what is the purpose of writing in that Molly was seen, ironically, by the pigeons themselves who are literally looking over everything. Why was she seen symbolically having a cart satched onto her, having apparently she was riding dogs or something, or dogs were on the cart she was riding, so she was still doing work.
Exactly. Yeah.
They found something for her to do.
Yeah. So it wasn't. I don't think Molly imagined herself doing work when she left. She must have imagined a life where she could just eat sugar and wear ribbons and chill. But maybe the irony of Molly's end is she just ended up in a different workhouse. So wouldn't Benjamin have been right in saying, either way, it's all the same in the end? Let me see if I can find the last thing mentioned about Molly. Should be near the beginning of chapter scrolling. Yeah, it says 3 days later, Molly disappeared. For some weeks, nothing was known of her whereabouts. Then the pigeons reported that they had seen her on the other side of Willingdon. She was between the shafts of a smart dog cart, painted red and black. So I guess it's the dog cart painted red and black? Or is it Molly? Maybe it's the cart. Which was standing outside a public house. A fat, red-faced man in check breeches and gaiters, who looked like a publican, was stroking her nose and feeding her with sugar. Her coat was newly clipped and she wore a scarlet ribbon around her forelock. She appeared to be enjoying herself, so the pigeons said. None of the other animals ever mentioned Molly. It's still a little deep. It sounds like a happy ending, but I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that this is a very dubious, story. The wording is just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Molly really got what she wanted. One, she's still working. You could say it's a slightly higher class of slavery. Her coat looks new and she's wearing a ribbon, but she's definitely owned by a human as opposed to the animals on Animal Farm, where they have at least one type of freedom where they're not owned by a human. Yeah, and then the pigeons said is also, why phrase it that way? So the pigeons said, as if it's not necessarily reliable. I think the phrasing there is a little telling. Why didn't any of the other animals ever mention Molly again? Said none of the other animals ever mentioned Molly again. As if it was a decisive move to never mention Molly again.
Maybe the fact that she did indeed seem to have achieved a much more pleasant life, having escaped the farm. Maybe she wasn't mentioned again after that because they didn't want, it was like a propaganda itself, not to mention her. Don't mention her, or people are gonna think, hey, if you escape to the next farm, you're gonna have a great life. And do they really want people to be thinking that even migration, when mass migration takes place, people move to get a better life. They don't care what kind of better life that might be. But even if it's a step, a pebble stone height from where they were, you will be motivated to move. If that is the case, do you really want animals on Animal Farm to be saying, oh man, this is wasting my time? Napoleon is getting into a position where I don't like, I'm defecting. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you don't mention somebody who's obviously doing better. That's something I've heard long time ago. People who live abroad and they come back home, they keep crying down where they were and how they are living the amazing life now. Or when you hop across to their neck of the woods, you find out, hey, we're not as prosperous as we think we are.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems that she would have achieved something. Looking at it in an honest way, she's wearing her ribbons. We know the ribbons for her. Those ribbons mean luxury. So she's wearing the ribbon, the scarlet ribbon at that. It said she appeared to be enjoying herself. So yeah, maybe the story of Molly was too dangerous. Oh, leave the farm and live a happy life. No, we can't have that kind of propaganda around here. That could be it. I wonder if the pigeons themselves, well, what reason would they have to lie?
Well, the idea is that maybe they didn't lie. They actually told it like it is. And when the higher-ups would have heard what the pigeons reported, they began to think, oh no.
Suppress that story.
Yeah.
We can't have that in the papers. Let's censor that out. No need to mention her again. Yeah. So, in a sense, Molly made a good move for her, for herself. But the glaring irony that is really standing out to me though is that she left this rebellion because she couldn't bother with the hard work, only to go work for another man. So it's almost as if she went back to Mr. Jones. We know this man isn't Mr. Jones, but what is the difference? So she got what she wanted in that she didn't have to deal with a new world order. She just continued with things as they were. I'm working for a person, for a human. I can have my meal taken care of and I can eat sugar when I want. That's all I need. I have my luxuries. I don't need any more freedom than that. That's enough for me. So perhaps Molly kind of won in that. Molly definitely has it better than the other animals later down the line, for sure. Yeah. All right. I'm still conflicted about Molly, but I suppose she jumped out of the fire and landed in the frying pan. Yeah. Molly, yeah. She did end up enjoying the comfort of the old ways, being fed the sugar, wearing ribbons, and having her mane taken care of by this red-faced man. Yeah. And even though her departure marks, some disunity amongst the animals, even throughout the entire novel, the unity isn't shattered. The animals still more or less bind together. And so we're not really seeing many scuffles amongst the animals. It's more of the pigs versus everybody else. So it's kind of amongst the classes rather than amongst the particular animals. Yeah. Molly. And then we have this quotation. The dog bounded forward, seized Snowball by the neck and dragged him bleeding out on the door. Dragged him bleeding out of the door. So that's the end of democracy, pretty much. The beginning of an authoritarian rule. Only one head of state, one leader, one person to make all the decisions. And then he decides to end the Sunday meetings, which further limits the other animals' input in decision making. Yeah. And then this quote from Squealer. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourself. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrade. And then, where should we? And what's interesting is the animals just eat this up like hot rice. They just believe it. Well, it makes sense. We might make the wrong decisions. Let's leave it up to Snowball, up to Napoleon. Yeah. And then a question that I think about when I see this quote is it better to relinquish your power to someone you believe is smarter than you? Or is it better to freely make your own decisions, even if you might be wrong? Yeah, pretty interesting. So, some nice quotes, some nice little lines. But the Mollie incident, Mollie is a character that I think about much more than I should. I often wonder, did Mollie make the right move? Was Mollie's life better after leaving the farm? Or was it just another version of the same thing? No substantial change. Who knows? Maybe Mollie did. Mollie did what she thought was best. So you know what? Still better than Benjamin, who does nothing at all. I'll give her that. Alright, what about themes? Who wants to do a little bit of reading on some themes here? Sarita, is it gonna be you? And Sarita is hiding away. Oscar, falling asleep?
No, sir.
Alright, do some reading, please. Tell us about these two themes in chapter 5.
All right, so power and corruption. Chapter 5 marks a significant shift in the balance of power on the farm. Napoleon's expulsion of the Snowball signals the end of any pretense of democracy as he quickly consolidates his control over the farm. The chapter illustrates how power can corrupt even those who initially claim to work for the greater good. Napoleon's use of the dogs to enforce his will is a clear indication that he's willing to use fear and violence to maintain his authority, abandoning the principles of animalism in favor of a dictatorship. The manipulation of truth. Squealer's role becomes more prominent in this chapter as he uses his rhetorical skills to reshape the truth in Napoleon's favor. He convinces the animals that Snowball was a traitor and that Napoleon had secretly supported the windmill all along. This theme of manipulating facts to suit those in power foreshadows the increasing control the pigs will have over the animal's perception of reality. The gradual erosion of truth is central to the pig's ability to maintain control over the farm.
Nice. Thank you, Oscar. I'm gonna have you read a little bit more, but this last sentence here, oh man, it's so crucial. The erosion of truth. The pigs have this uncanny ability to rewrite history. And no matter how ridiculous their lies are, the animals end up believing. It seems so strange to me. How could the animals, they were there. They were at the battle. So how is it that someone else is going to tell you what happened? What about your own memory, your own recollection? And I don't know if maybe Vashti have read it. I don't know if you guys have read 1984. Was it? Yeah, another of Orwell's famous novel. It's so interesting because so many of the concepts here are explored further in that novel. One of those concepts is that of like brainwashing, through words, just the power of linguistic suggestions. You tell somebody something often enough until they believe it, right? And this idea of believing multiple things that are contradictory to one another. They call it in that novel double think. And you say things that they don't align, they don't add up, but somehow you make it make sense. They call that double speak, right? And in this novel here, we have something akin to that where you can see that the sky is red. But because Snowball says, the sky is actually green, the sky begins to look kind of green until you can't even imagine the red anymore. So this kind of brainwashing, it's quite overt to the reader, but the animals can't see it for what it is. And it forces us to question whether or not we are in a similar situation, being fed lies, being subliminally brainwashed without taking note of it. Is it that the things that we consume, the things that we see on social media, see on the news, the propaganda, we see it and hear it so often that we just assume it to be true, even if it contradicts our own intuition, until our very intuition is erased. right? So this ability of controlling the animals by distorting or just outright destroying truth, it's a recurring theme that comes to a head when the commandments are physically moved from the wall, and they're actually changing words, and eventually they just remove all the commandments and just write one thing, right? All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. It's this erosion of truth. You destroy the truth, and so you control the masses. The manipulation of truth. Very, very critical.
So you also have the power that is actually instilled. Words are simple, but you put words in the hands of somebody who can, like Napoleon and Squealer. I mean, those words are no longer just words. They are weapons. They can, and that is something that exists even today in how politicians consume us with a lot of rhetoric that has absolutely no benefit to our lives whatsoever. It improves their lives. I've heard a conversation recently about right here in good old TNT about why politicians need to have a raise, and substantial raise at that. And you're thinking, people like us, maybe I'm the Benjamin in my whole family behaves in a certain way. We're thinking, is there anybody else out here who is actually talking about prices of groceries, the prices of this, the Caribbean Airlines pilots are having issues, and the politicians are getting raised. And then we have our very own Squealer who comes in, and when he is finished verifying why politicians, both opposition and the ruling government, need to have a raise, you are just sitting down there wondering, oh my God, why isn't anybody else here paying attention to this? That the power of language is such a weapon that you just don't understand how anyone could not see the disadvantage of being able to string a few words together and then see how it is a double-edged sword, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. When I remember Obama's speeches, and the aphorisms and the yes we can, a lot of people who probably, I don't know what people know, but probably didn't know anything about the actual manifesto and the actual capabilities of a president. They might have gotten so caught up in the power of the language. Donald Trump is similar in that way, in that he speaks in a way that, I don't know, intelligent isn't the right word to capture it, but it's a kind of directness that a lot of people are enamored by, right? And whether it's being direct or being elegant with a speech, there are so many ways to use language as a way to gain support from people who don't really listen to what you're saying. It's just how you're saying it. It sounds so good when you say it, when you say it. Or there's such an emotional connection when you speak. You feel good listening to this person. And so you equate that with them being a good leader, right? And, I guess with lawyers, it might not be so different. Lawyers have to have that power. It's their line of work. Salesmen need that power. If you're going to sell something, you need to sell me a feeling. You sell me that emotion, And when you have me feeling that particular way in the moment, I'll sign the contract and maybe regret it later when the feeling has worn off and the pocket is feeling the burn, right? But the power language is definitely a power that runs throughout this entire novella. The language is used to manipulate truth, brainwash the masses to garner support for the leader, to force the animals to work more, to inculcate loyalty. All of this is done, a little bit of it is done through actual violence and intimidation, but the bulk of the work is really through language. Really through language. Very, very, very important theme. Yeah, very important theme. And we have betrayal of ideals, which we've touched on this. Seeing how animalism is kind of eroding its devolving into something else. And then you have fear and control. As you look at Napoleon's dogs, he uses fear as a means to control. So when language doesn't work, you bring out the big dogs, literally in this case. Yeah. And we have some interesting characters here. Oscar, still with us?
Sorry, so what did you say?
You still with us, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, run us through the characters, please.
It's Napoleon. Napoleon's character takes a darker turn in chapter 5 as he reveals his true ambitions. His use of force to remove Snowball and his decision to end the democratic meeting show that he's no longer interested in equality or the collective good. Instead, Napoleon is focused on consolidating his own power and his growing authoritarianism foreshadows the oppression that will come. Snowball's leadership is cut short in this chapter, but his vision for a farm, particularly the windmill, leaves a lasting impact. Snowball's enthusiasm for progress and innovation contrasts with Napoleon's more cynical approach, and his expulsion signals the end of any real debate on the farm. Despite his flaws, Snowball genuinely believed in the ideas of animalism, and his downfall highlights the theme of betrayal within revolutionary movements. Squealer's role as Napoleon's propagandist becomes more pronounced in this chapter. His ability to manipulate language and reshape the truth is crucial to Napoleon's consolidation of power. By convincing the animals that Snowball was a traitor and that Napoleon has always had their best interests at heart, Squealer helps him maintain the illusion of legitimacy around Napoleon's dictatorship. His speeches reflect how authoritarian regimes use propaganda to justify their actions and manipulate the masses. Mollie's departure from the farm reflects her unwillingness to sacrifice her comforts for the sake of the revolution. She symbolizes those who prefer the security and luxury of the old regime over the hardships of revolution. Mollie's defection also highlights the idea that not all individuals are suited to a life under a new or equal system, and her vanity and desire for human attention represent the lingering influence of the pre-revolutionary world.
Thank you, Oscar. And that last line kind of again got me thinking about Mollie. Mollie actually won. Mollie got exactly what she wanted, because I was looking at Mollie's working for another human as kind of a little bit of a loss. Like, well, yes, you've escaped this farm, but you still end up working for a man. But Mollie enjoys that kind of attention, doesn't she? Being pampered and petted by you. I don't think that's necessarily a negative for Mollie. That's probably a part of the luxury.
Again, because we don't know what exactly happens to her eventually as she ages. I don't know if Orwell would have even slipped it in, even subliminally, sorry. We just will never know, because as she aged, and that's just generally aging on the whole. Would her owners have still put ribbons on her in her aged body when she's racked with pain, etc.? Would she be still able to pull a dog cart? Or does she actually end up just like Boxer?
Just like Boxer, I was thinking of Boxer just now as being a nice parallel. They're on different farms. Look at how Boxer is, highlighted and praised when he's able to work. But as soon as he outlives his usefulness, he's treated with such almost disdain. They just got rid of him like he was a piece of meat. So I'm guessing perhaps that is going to be Mollie's end, where yes, while she's able to work and, do what the humans need her to do, they're going to take care of her. But once she reaches the point where she's not able to pull the cart anymore, then why would they continue to cherish her? Yeah.
So isn't that life? That's a life in it. In every sense of the word. When we are young and useful, we have a different badge of honor. Let us start growing older and being unable to do certain things. That level of discard and garbage bags are associated with one another.
But man, Boxer was looking forward to his pension and his plot of land in his old age. So the pig sold the idea to the animals that when you get older, when you're no longer able to work, don't worry. We're not going to discard you. We're going to make sure that you're set for life and you can enjoy your retirement and you can, still live in a what's the word? I don't know, the word has evaded me, but you'll be able to still live a respectable life, right? Until the very end. So at the very least, even if, you're no longer being praised as the strongest animal on the farm, if you get your plot of land, you have your pension, then you're able to live out the days worry-free, I would take that. That would be a good consolation. So Boxer was at least looking forward to that. But not even that. the moment it can't work anymore, the moment you are no longer able to give, to provide, to serve, nobody cares about serving you. It is so cynical, but as you mentioned, it's not too far from reality. I I haven't retired yet, but I know about a lot of teachers who have taught for decades, and not just teachers, but government workers in general. And upon retirement, it's like they have to fight to get whatever benefits they should be getting. Instead of the government saying, wow, you have done so well. Come, take $1 million, house on the hill. Let me honor you. It's as if no, you're begging. Or it's so hard to get a meeting. Nobody's returning your calls anymore. Like, what's up? When you wanted me to do this and do that, you were all up in my inbox. You were making contact. But no, when it's your time to serve me, when it's your time to return the favor, it's as if you want to cast me aside and just move on to the people who are now giving you, right? I'm no longer giving. I'm no longer doing what I had been doing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And so that's it. No more contact, no more love. Where's the love? So, I mean, it's not so unrealistic. It's not so different from real life, as sad as that is. And I think Molly is gonna end up in that same situation where, as soon as she outlives her usefulness, that's where the love will end. That's where the ribbons and sugar will end. And so, in that sense, it would be similar to staying on the farm. Because that's what Boxer ended up with, that kind of end. Where as soon as he wasn't able to pull all the stones, they just sold him off. Quite sad, quite depressing, but that's how it's meant to be, this novella. Yeah, man. Boxer. All right, we have a couple of devices here. We have some irony in this chapter. The animals fought the revolution to achieve equality, only for Napoleon to seize power. Right, so that's an irony that we have been seeing. It's not a new irony. We have some foreshadowing in the puppies that Napoleon reared, eventually becoming his army. So that was foreshadowed and it came to fruition in this chapter, right? And it's foreshadowing more control, not just based on linguistic prowess, but based on actual force, military might. And then you have the windmill being a symbol. We have some symbolism, symbolic of Snowball's idealism and vision for the future. And we know that the windmill is linked to the progress, modernization, better life. They talked about, generating electricity and stuff like that. But the windmill ends up being an artifact of struggle, right? It's really struggle, contention, disappointment. With the first windmill got, it was destroyed by, was it a storm? The second windmill, something else happened. So the windmill, bit by bit, it never really materializes into anything positive. It is just, going around in circles and kind of working to no end.